Most Unitarian Universalist ministers, I suspect, spend more time reading books than clergy and other religious traditions. We are not drawing from the same well all the time, and our congregants are not all the same in their thoughts. We share some ethical values, but might interpret them in different ways. We are not theologically the same, but most of our congregations are made up of people who are willing to examine different religious and philosophical ideas, perhaps incorporating them into their own belief systems and spiritual practices. Along the search for new ideas, I found a book by an English philosopher named John Gray, entitled 7 Types of Atheism. The title drew me in. I thought that atheism was atheism, a disbelief in God or gods. I thought that was it. John Gray, however, proposes that atheists might not believe in a deity or deities, but their beliefs might be rooted in different core ideas and influences, notions about humanity. This Tuesday is National Blasphemy Day. So it seemed reasonable to examine ideas that some religious people might find objectionable. So on Tuesday, live it up. Doing so is not intended to be trendy or antisocial. We're not trying to say, oh, look at us, we're wild and crazy. Unitarian Universalists can examine and embrace many different religious perspectives. Some of those include atheism, disbelieving in God or gods, agnosticism, doubting in God or gods, and humanism. The American Humanist Association defines humanism as a non-theistic worldview with ethical values informed by scientific knowledge and driven by a desire to meet the needs of people in the here and now. At the foundation of those values is an affirmation of the dignity of every human being. It is probable that the plurality of Unitarian Universalists now fall into one of those religious categories, though their numbers are fewer than they used to be. In the 1970s, religious humanism, the American Humanist Association's values were so prevalent that 75% of Unitarian Universalists consider themselves humanists. In fact, the American Humanist Association timed its meetings and locations according to where the Unitarian Universalist General Assembly was going to be held. So they synchronized themselves with the Unitarian Universalist schedules. I'm not a skeptic. I believe in God, though I travel spiritually with some people who do not. One of the reasons that I am comfortable with skeptical views of theism is that my personal experience and knowledge of history tell me that when people believe with certainty in one version of God or gods, or with certainty that there are not God or gods, they do terrible things. I genuinely believe that when we are willing to listen to other points of view, accept differences, and understand the limits of knowledge, that we have the potential to grow spiritually and intellectually. But on to John Gray's 2 types of atheism. His first typology of atheism is the new atheism that began in the 19th century and continues with people like Richard Dawkins. New atheism's core belief is that science disproves religion, thus no deity or deities can be demonstrated. John Gray writes, the idea that religion consists of a bunch of discredited theories is itself a discredited theory. Gray's point is that science cannot replace a religious view of the world, since there is no such thing as the scientific worldview. He even points out that science cannot dispel religion as an illusion. And he said, and this is a quote, because science contains no proof that the creation of illusions may not be useful in life. Besides, the reality of the way that science works is that ideas are constantly being examined and discarded. Science cannot replace religion because it is not based in any form of certainty. It's a methodology, not a belief system. In fact, the only people who want to refute Richard Dawkins are those Christians who take the Bible as literally true in every aspect. Gray points out that hundreds of thousands of people in the Soviet Union and Communist China were executed for not adhering to scientific atheism. He gives as sharp as criticism to this perspective. Gray's second form of atheism is secular humanism. This form of belief holds that humanity is making progress over time, and the religious beliefs that impede the progress of science and reason will be discarded over time as irrelevant to human history. It is pointed out that Christianity is the first religion to have a linear rather than a cyclical view of human history. Gray believes that in the 18th century that Christianity began to be replaced by secular creeds, but holds that the story of a redemptive drama did not vanish, but renewed in another guise. A story of redemption through divine providence was replaced by one of progress through the collective work of humanity. Progress is sometimes slow and hard, but it will be reached according to secular humanism. For Gray, this is the language of religious faith, not reason. He finds no message outside of faith to believe that humanity will be moving toward improvement. He finds that in humanism, a self-realizing God was replaced, in his opinion, by a self-deifying humanity. He holds that the belief that humanity makes history in order to realize its full possibilities is a relic of mysticism, like the belief that humanity is inherently good if inspired with information and positive experience. Gray believes this perspective is ideological and not within the record of actual history. Do I need to tell you he's probably writing about us? Unitarian Universalism has always believed in progress and the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It was even echoed in that introduction I gave to you from the American Humanist Association. We have held the hope that new discoveries would encourage the good in people. I believe this most strongly in 1989 when I first attended a Unitarian Universalist church. With the promises of the potential for better communication and the coming technology that would become the internet, it seemed likely that people would be able to learn new things and become better citizens of the world. Knowledge improves us all, I thought, and looked forward to social and cultural progress made by the internet. It was right to believe that some social progress would happen due to instant contact with people all over the world. It was unforeseen, though, that the medium would also facilitate Christian nationalism and other forms of organized oppression that harken back to dark days of our history. This might be a blip in our culture's evolution or a revelation of the cyclical view of history that most cultures have embraced. Though we need to function religiously as a community that believes in progress, that is our hope. It might be true that we have to revisit the divisions that we have struggled against. In other words, progress might be happening, but we constantly have to revisit the past things that have curtailed improvement in human life. The third form of atheism, Gray warns, is social Darwinism, especially applied to race and ethnicity. This belief holds that there is no God, but that science demonstrates that some people are genetically superior to others due to evolutionary pressures. This is tied to eugenics, that pseudoscience that only those with good genes should be encouraged to bear children, or in the case of 20th century history, be permitted to live. Years before I met my wife, I had a second date with a woman. In the first date, she had mentioned that she was an atheist. It was not a real deal breaker. I'm a Unitarian Universalist. I am atheist with my friends and close colleagues. In the second date, she told me that an African-American coworker had asked her out. I did not know why that was troubling for her. I thought maybe it's because he's a coworker. So I said, "What's your concern?" She then proceeded to tell me about her family's connection with William Shockley, the Nobel laureate, an outspoken racist and eugenicist, and also an atheist. She had practically grown up with him and thought of him as an uncle. She identified with his belief that some people were superior by their race than others. I kept my poker face when she was telling me this. And when she finished, I lied to her that I was part African American to ensure that I would never see her again. It is amazing to me that this was a form of atheism, which I thought would be more rational. And also that this sort of thing still existed. This is not totally disconnected from Gray's fourth kind of atheism that was aligned with modern political religion, especially about human nature. Gray notes that Marxist communism abhorred religion as the opiate of the masses and believed in progress through dictatorship, Nazi ideology, though supported by religious groups, also did not delve deeply into faith and promoted an ideology that was essentially atheistic, based upon eugenics and other forms of pseudoscience. The fifth type of atheism, according to Gray, is God haters. Their disbelief in God is not due to ideology as much as it is born out of a personal experience. Gray shares the example of the Marquis de Sade, who was angry with religious authorities who were opposed to him poisoning and otherwise harming women because he thought it was good fun. Gray also mentions the Russian author Dostoevsky, who was oppressed by Russian authorities for his radical ideas and associations. Dostoevsky blamed a belief in God for his nation's woes. This kind of atheism is fairly common in the United States among those who feel that religious ideas oppress them, especially if that is personal. I often find that God haters are people who are truly damaged by the religion they were reared in. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people, and other kinds of folks. And women often speak of terrible things that happened to them in religious organizations that told them to conform to traditional roles and expectations, or they were evil for being themselves. Some people experienced other kinds of persecution in more religiously conservative environments. People who were reared in more liberal religious communities, and those transcend just ours, but also in Christian and Jewish liberal religious communities. Those people rarely have these feelings, even if they don't become atheists, because they were never told that they were bad because of who they were. God haters may have rational reasons why they are atheists, but at the core of their atheistic belief is a strong emotional experience that believes that has produced revulsion against anyone or any institution that believes in God. God has become an idea that creates a strong emotional response because God was used for their oppression. For such people, the word God may evoke traumatic memories. Gray's sixth form of atheism is complicated and is difficult for me to translate. He calls them atheists without progress. These are people who do not believe in God, but do not believe that with or without God, that human nature or society will improve. Yes, new technology and other things will happen, but human nature will remain the same, and not necessarily a positive, always positive thing. They do not believe that only one religious belief will lead to a better world. In fact, some of them still appreciate religion for aesthetic reasons. Atheists without progress believe that religion is natural for human beings, and do not believe that one religious belief is any better or worse than another. They believe that religious beliefs are rooted in the basic unconscious wiring of our animal nature, which can discern between food and poison, happiness and misery. Atheists without progress cannot envision a future change in human nature, believing that who we are as a species is hardwired into our brain. They believe that evolution has created the belief in God or gods in most people because it was valuable for our species. As Gray writes, the human mind is programmed for survival, not for truth. The seventh type of atheism is that of silence. God in this mode of belief is so irrelevant that it's better not even to speak of the idea of God. Others cannot find meaning from the belief in God at all. They observed that two people could follow the golden rule, but developed entirely different ways to apply it. To be totally honest, even though I have studied philosophy and theology sufficiently to understand most arguments for and against theism, this chapter is confusing to me and lacks a sense of intellectual cohesion. It seems to solidify, though, in the belief that society should discard the idea of God because believing in God does nothing more productive or meaningful than that which could be accomplished without a belief in God. God is no longer a useful belief. Even if God exists, these philosophers believe that God seems to be doing very little in human affairs. In other words, they want to fire God for inactivity, not doing his job. Why share these types of atheism with you this morning? In most Unitarian Universalist congregations, actually in all of them, even the churches I served that were clearly Unitarian Universalist congregations, there have been atheists, agnostics, humanists. Hardly ever was a message given to them about their beliefs or lack of beliefs. Yet, it is really true that they were very involved in the lives of their sacred community and hidden in plain sight. They knew they were affirmed, but often did not promote or talk about their religious beliefs. The congregation was still, though, a community they loved and worked for and gave to. The year after joining the Unitarian Universalist Church of Chattanooga, Tennessee, I sat across from a man who had gone through the new members class with me. He had been open about being an atheist, and when he said this, he looked around the room as he told us, wondering if anyone was going to take exception at his revelation. No one did. I asked him as we sat there about a year later, "How do you feel now about joining this church?" He replied, "Great! I never imagined a place like this could exist. I never thought that I would sing Christmas carols without guilt or worry that I was compromising my principles. But now I'm in a community, I can enjoy the season. I feel free." Our journey in spiritual community is a shared endeavor. We are accepted as we are, and also encouraged to go deeper, to consider new ideas and paths that are new to us, and re-examine at times those that we have abandoned. In the shared journey, all are worthy, all are welcome. May it ever be. So be it. Blessed be. Amen.